Welcome. It's great to have you here for this guided meditation and Dharma talk. My name is Jonathan Foust, and I am really happy to be able to share these practices. We're going to be talking about the topic of karma a little bit later, and karma or action is very much related to intention. So we're going to kind of blend that into our meditation. But before we do that, a few announcements and a few thank yous. First of all, a big thank you to our producers, to Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo. A big thank you to our mindful movement teacher. We have three wonderful teachers who alternate offering mindful movement before this session. And also a big thank you to Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy, who lead mindful dialogue after this. So if you want the whole kind of live stream happening event, at 6:30 you can join the mindful movement. This is Eastern Standard Time. Here at 7:30 on my YouTube channel, or here I'm streaming on Facebook at 7:30 Eastern Standard. And then when the whole shebang is over, which is about, I try to end sharp at 8:45. So usually 8:45 to 8:50, you can join Mindful Dialogue. Opportunity to talk with like-minded people, share about the practice, share about the topic that we covered. So please feel free to check that out. That is available. All those links are available on my website and my Facebook page. So you know as well, if you would like some supportive stuff, inspiration for your practice, I have a monthly and a weekly newsletter. In the monthly, I share my photography for the month and have the recent talks available as kind of a digest. So that's there for you. And also just to say that this is all offered freely. Very much inspired by this principle of dana, or generosity, where the teachings have no price. They're priceless, so they're offered without a fee. And hopefully generosity works in all directions. And if you feel inspired to support this, and just to ensure that this is available to everyone and no one will ever be denied, please feel free to make a donation through my website. Happily and gratefully received. And just to say that the real gift is being able to share these practices. So I feel immensely grateful for that. For our meditation for this session, I was thinking we might do a classical practice. First starting with kind of arriving and softening inside. So much of this first stage of meditation is about present moment awareness. It's about gathering attention, but it's also about receptivity. And you can receive through relaxation and through softening. I'll then offer a little bit of guidance around this practice of non-judging awareness, of mindfulness, where you might expand beyond your anchor or your focal point to open to a sense of what's changing. And here, of course, you can observe not only what's happening, but you can begin to examine the attitude in your mind. At the end, we'll have some time to explore what it's like just to simply be, just to rest in presence. So, with that, let's start in with our meditation. You might want to reach your arms up overhead. Take some time to move, stretch, let out any sounds. You're on mute, so you can bellow, screech, shout, mutter, whatever you like. It's always helpful to make sure that you're not going to be disturbed. As you're ready, if you like, you can close your eyes. And you might take a moment just to reflect on your intention. What has called you here for this time of practice? And you might just sense for a moment just completing the following phrase, either spontaneously or making up the words that feel right for you. For this meditation, I am here to And again, if no words happen, just find the words that resonate for you now. It may be that you're here to relax. You're here to pay attention. Or you're here to explore what it means to practice self-observation without judgment. Perhaps you're here just simply to rest and be. Or perhaps you're here to discover your intention as you practice. You may find it helpful now to turn your attention to your breath and gently lengthen the in-breath to the count of 4 or 5. And then glide right into the exhalation to again 4 or 5. And for this next little bit, let your breath be consciously slow and smooth and deep. You may find it helpful to match the length of the in-breath with the length of the out-breath, and as you do so, just notice the effect on the mind. You might sense as well, on the exhalation, could you soften a little bit more on the inside? And over the next, let's say, 2 or 3 breaths, how intimately can you feel the breath on the inside right now? And as you're ready, release all control of your breath. Relax and allow your awareness to open into observation of the breath. And taking some time now to explore what it's like to soften inside. Softening from the inside, the muscles around your eyes. Feel your forehead smooth. Imagine that you could let all the muscles of your face relax or soften right now. Relax the jaw. And could you feel the inside of your mouth and in particular, relax the tongue. Let your tongue fill your lower jaw as you soften it, and you might even sense if you could relax the root of your tongue down into your throat. Feel your arms heavy. You might imagine your arms like heavy drapes hanging from your shoulders. And just sense from the inside down through the elbows. And down through the wrists. And sensing from the inside, and feel the palms. The space inside the thumbs. The volume of your fingers. The backs of the hands. Feel the space inside your throat. And feel the space inside your lungs as your body naturally and easily breathes. And could you in any way soften and relax your lower back? And the buttocks and the floor of the pelvis. And you might bring your attention now about 3 inches below your navel and in toward the very center of your abdomen. And just hold your attention here. Feel, soften, and notice what you feel. Notice if you can feel the subtlety of the breath here, down deep in the core. And feel now the volume and the length and the weight of your legs from the hip joints to the knees. The knees to the ankles. The tops of the feet and the toes. And the soles of the feet and the heels. Sensing through the whole body now, is there anywhere that might soften or relax? And from this place of softening, of receptivity, you might direct your attention to an anchor of your choosing. For many, it's the breath. The breath at the nostrils or the belly, or even just the general sense of the body breathing. But you might like to explore using the sounds as an anchor, the experience of the sound vibrations. And some find it helpful to soften the palms, the fingers and thumbs, and allow the sense of aliveness here to be this anchor. And whatever anchor you choose, breath, sound, or the feeling in the palms, for this next period of time, let this be your primary point of focus. Knowing that the mind is designed to generate thoughts, to anticipate, to review. But when in those moments you wake up with the mind far away, let your practice be this re-arriving, this re-relaxing and receiving, feeling from the inside your anchor. And this part of our practice is arriving again and again, and beginning again and again. And what could soften right now? And again, how intimately can you feel your anchor from the inside? And if you are lost in a thought right now, could you let it go? Acknowledging what's happening and sensing if you can let go of any sense of concern for the future, any reviewing of the past. Allow yourself to deeply relax, to guide your attention again to the here and now. To this moment and this one. One aspect of this practice is noticing what's happening as it's happening. As I breathe in, I'm aware of breathing in. As I breathe out, I'm aware of breathing out. Being aware of sound vibrations. Being aware of the felt sense of aliveness inside. Another quality which naturally develops from this practice is not only being aware of what's happening as it's happening, but being aware of your relationship to what is happening. Noticing the attitude in the mind, the subtlety of the mind moving for or against whatever's here, and a heightened perception of what is changing. And you may find it helpful, if it feels right for you, to widen your attention beyond your anchor, noting 360 degrees everything that is changing, relaxed and awake to the flow of things, sensing what it means to let things be. And as you continue, when the mind is lost in thought, you begin again, Relax, soften, and use your anchor as a way of gathering and arriving. And then again, broaden, widen, awake to all that is, open and spacious. And what is happening right now? Is it possible to let this be? In this remaining 5 minutes or so, you might refresh your practice. Could you relax and soften again the tongue, the lips, and the jaw? Softening and sensing from the inside, the palms, the soles of the feet and the heels. And over the next 3 breaths, how intimately can you feel your anchor from the inside? And can you sense this quality of the observer? this quality of non-judging, non-comparing, non-preferential awareness. Just relaxed and alert and awake. You might broaden your awareness, opening to this field of change. Deeply relaxed, at the same time alert. Open and allowing. And letting any sense of doing now fall away. Let the anchor drop away. Any sense of control. And you might take this time to explore what it means to rest in presence. And you might explore the following question. Is there anything right now in the body or mind that could soften or relax or let go? And is there anything right now that could relax or soften or let go even more than that? You might gently now turn your attention to your breath. Just notice where you feel the breath on the inside right now. Sensing both this sense of spacious, allowing, and at the same time, the intimate detail of breathing in, breathing out. And with your eyes closed, you might let your head move a little bit to the left and right. From here, let your body begin to move and stretch in any way that feels good for you. Taking this time for your transition. There's no hurry, no rush. And you might like to reach your arms up overhead. Stretch up to the left side, the right side. Lift your chin up toward the ceiling. Let out any sounds. Welcome. I was recently asked to offer some thoughts on the topic of karma. Karma is a fascinating subject. It's easy to look at this through a really simplistic lens, but it's actually quite complex. There's a lot of subtlety to it. But at the same time, when it feels really complex, it can sometimes be really pretty simple. I ran across this, I believe this is from Twitter. The man who pulled into a parking space I was waiting for and told me to go screw myself has arrived for his job interview with me. I think that's called instant karma. Maybe you've seen the instant karma videos on YouTube. It's like life is saying, let's see how you like it. Karma, again, is a fascinating topic, and I'd like to talk about a couple aspects of it. The first is the power of remembering. So much of this practice is based on what's called sati, which is for remembering. And one of the remembrances is impermanence. Very, very powerful. But another, maybe even more important quality of remembering is remembering karma, cause and effect. What you sow, you shall reap. I'd like to talk about how intention is related to karma. And then finally, to talk about what's called the Wheel of Samsara, the Wheel of Becoming, which speaks of karma, but it also speaks of what is it that's beyond karma, which is really juicy stuff. So this whole element of Buddhist philosophy, focuses on impermanence, on emptiness, but also on cause and effect. And so recently, the Dalai Lama was asked, what is more important, to understand the great philosophical Buddhist teachings about emptiness, or to understand karma, to understand cause and effect? The answer is that it is more important to understand karma, to understand cause and effect. The teaching is really much more essential. Without understanding karma, you will not understand where you have personal responsibility and how to take responsibility. So, a lot of juicy stuff there to unpack. Gil Fronsdal is one of my Dharma heroes. Talked about how when he was living in a monastery, it was very easy to kind of let things be. When he got married and had kids, it was a lot more difficult, he said. When the kids are fighting, when one of them is sick, you have to make choices and you have to act. Mindfulness is about resting and being present in the moment. But when we're living in the world, we have to make choices and we have to take action. And that's where kind of the karma piece comes in. So I once sat a month-long retreat, and at the end of the retreat, one of the teachers said, if there's one thing to remember impermanence. Remember that everything changes. You may be familiar with the 5 daily recollections. They're just little remembrances to reflect on every day. And the first 4 speak of impermanence. I am of the nature to grow old. I cannot avoid aging. I am subject to illness and infirmity. I cannot avoid illness and infirmity. I am of the nature to die. I cannot avoid death. I will be parted from all that is dear and beloved to me. So this is the first part of the 5 daily recollections, the first 4. Remember that everything changes. Everything you love is going to evaporate. And while that's a pretty grim thing to think about every day, there's a very interesting paradoxical thing, is that when I think about death and sickness and illness and the fact that everything I love is going to disappear, I remember that I'm going to die, but I also remember that I'm not dead yet. And that can sometimes bring up a really deep sense of gratitude, appreciation, wholesome intention. So remembering this fundamental truth that life equals change. If you resist change, you're going to suffer. If you embrace change, then you're kind of in the flow of things. And remembering this is, oh my God, it's just so helpful. I ran across this phrase, which I've shared here in the past, but I found it really, really helpful. In particular, This really came to me really strong when I was, sitting with my mother at the end of her life, and it was not pretty. And the line is to practice wholehearted, enthusiastic cooperation with reality. What a shift that created for me. Instead of being fearful and anxious and pulling back, to actually lean in. Could I be wholehearted in this process of being with her in her dying? I've been teaching meditation for a long time. And it's interesting, over the years, lots of different populations, from junior high school kids to businesses to government folks to CEOs to judges. And the one thing they all have in common is all of their stress is in their relationship to change. All of it. Life is about stimulus and response. And most of the time, we're reacting to stimulus, where we're unaware of our conditioning, and we're just we're in a pinball machine. And this is where the miracle of this practice comes in, to recognize that you can slow things down. That rather than fighting with reality, you can cooperate with it. And it begins to open up new possibilities. As the saying goes, if you fight with reality, chances are you're going to lose. It's a lot easier to learn how to work with it. So this remembrance of impermanence is just critical. Everything is going to change. When things are feeling really, really hard, remembering it's going to change is helpful. And it's maybe even more important when things are going great to remember that this too may change. So this speaks to the first four of these recollections. And here's the fifth, which is really turning attention to karma or actions. And you can just reflect on these words. I am the owner of my actions and heir to my actions. Actions are the womb from which I have sprung. My actions are my relations. My actions are my protection. The fruit of my actions, both wholesome and unwholesome, skillful and unskillful, I will inherit. Now there's a lot there. That you are the creator of action, but you're also the heir to your former actions. That you are the result of former actions. Actions can be your relations, they can be your protectors. And whatever actions you take, whether they be skillful or not skillful, you will inherit the fruit of those actions. So I'm sure you get a sense of this, the nature of cause and effect. And this idea of karma is certainly not limited to Buddhism. The phrase, as you sow, so shall you reap. What goes around comes around. From Matthew 7:12, all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do even so to them, for this is the law. And also the golden rule of Confucianism has a kind of a similar statement. This is interesting. Is there one word which may serve as a rule for practice for all one's life? Confucius answered, is not reciprocity such a word? What you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. It's so simple. I remember clearly when I first heard the golden rule, of course stated in the positive, do unto others as they would have them do unto you. And it made total sense, such a deep resonance with it. I remember just thinking, if everyone did this, we'd be living on heaven and earth. And then I saw in my inspiration, even at that 7 or 8 year old age, of how few people actually practice it. And of course, I ran across this line from Bill Cosby in one of his very first records I remember as a kid, where he said, what they did in his family was do unto others before they do unto you. But this law is so easy to forget. And when we forget that law or that rule, then we're generally narcissistic, self-focused, narrow-minded, and self-preservationist. But I've noticed as soon as I remember it, there's more space. So this law of karma is sometimes misunderstood as predeterminism. That what you're experiencing is a result of past actions and you're stuck with them. But maybe it's the opposite. You're the owner of your thoughts, your speech, your actions. And through your thoughts and speech and actions, you actually influence the future. Maybe. It's not as simple as cause and effect. And there are lots of different theories, lots of different philosophies on karma. And this ripple of cause and effect can be much more subtle and long and cumulative than we're aware of. We do have these moments of instant karma where you get kind of immediate feedback from an action. But the Buddha was kind of quick to point out that it's not so simple. That not every single thing in your life is a result of a former action, because it's a much broader sea of cause and effect, all kind of bouncing off each other. When you think of being born at this time on the planet, with environmental degradation, with polarization, global warming, conflict over resources, are you responsible for that? Is that the direct result of your former actions? I think not, but it's part of the makeup of here and now. If you have a genetic issue with your health, is that genetic issue your personal responsibility? Again, who knows? But one could argue no, but these are the cards that you've been dealt with. From what I understand, the Buddha did not say that all illness was a result of karma. And in war, for example, if someone assaults you, it's not necessarily the result of your past karma. It might be just kind of bad luck, or just part of like a bigger matrix of cause and effect kind of bouncing off each other. And yet there's something here about this that Ajahn Sumedho, wonderful teacher, he once said, I never understood this. If you believe in karma, why would you hold on to revenge? The person perpetrating misdeeds is setting in motion their own misfortune. And it's interesting, when I reflect on that, it helped me to see that someone being unskillful was simply going to perpetuate their suffering. And I had a pretty profound experience of this many, many years ago. When I was in the Peace Corps in West Africa, I took some time to kind of bum around Europe. I had $300 for the whole summer. And a friend lent me his tent, which was a really, really nice tent. It was nicer than what I needed. It was a $300 tent, and he just lent it to me. And when I kind of arrived in Marseille in the airport, my luggage was on another flight. I had to wait, so I had just a few things with me. Among them, my tent, all my camping supplies, all that sort of stuff. And I got up and left to take a look at the time, and I came back and all my things were stolen, which put me into a panic, because there I was. I didn't have enough for 2 hotel rooms. I just didn't have the money. So anger, resentment, powerlessness, helplessness. And because I was waiting for the next flight was a long time, I decided just to meditate. And then it occurred to me of how miserable the person's life must be who stole my stuff. And I actually felt a pang of sadness for them. To be living that life, what kind of misery was the person living in now? And what kind of misery were they perpetuating? It shifted the sense of resentment to more of just a sense of sadness. Understanding this has been really, really helpful. There's a story which I find kind of hard to believe, but nonetheless, it's pretty inspiring. It's the story of these Tibetan monks who are being severely tortured in prison. After a long time, they were eventually released, and they were asked why they just didn't give up and die. And they said collectively that they did not want their tormentors to take on the karma of killing them. That's pretty amazing. So the sense of cause and effect. What if it's true? And what it does, I think, is it helps us reflect on really two things. On our intentions, what we most want, and then the actions that support that intention. I was at a conference and there was a question asked to the panel. I was on the panel and they said, "Do you believe in reincarnation?" And I said, well, if this is the only life we have, then I said we want to make the most of it. And if this is just a string of lifetimes and our actions are interrelated, then we want to make the most of it. One way to reflect on karma is to look back at your memories. Our memories so often affect our actions. I have one memory, a painful memory I go back to for myself. I grew up on a farm, kind of a gentleman's farm, but we had about 40 sheep, and from about the age of 6, I was in charge of feeding the animals, and I had to carry buckets of water. I had to pump, we had a hand pump, then I had to carry them a pretty good ways, and then dump the buckets into to water the sheep. And at one point, I think I was just lazy or resentful, and I skipped bringing the water. And the next time I carried water, the sheep were just frantic to drink. And just seeing the effect of my laziness and the suffering that I created these animals, because they drank down that water, and then I brought more, and then they drank that down, and then finally they were kind of satiated. But seeing the impact of my laziness or whatever it was, it still sticks with me today. In that same way, when I remember good things that I've done, that kind of fills me with a really wonderful sense of well-being. It's a story of King Ashok, who was kind of the first real political follower of the Buddha, who was very taken by this whole principle of dana, of generosity, and was really kind of responsible for kind of injecting the whole dana philosophy into the culture. The story goes that he had a scribe who would kind of notice the nice things he did for people. And at the end of his life, that list was read back to him. And I think it's easy to kind of underestimate the power of our memories. And to naturally, in meditation, your memories they'll find you. You know, everything undigested will eventually find its way to you. But I know for myself that really being in that memory of that kind of the suffering I created, those animals, revived a deep intention to want to ease suffering in animals. Part of intention that moves into action is creating habits. And this can be a very interesting reflection to look at your habits. I've kind of lived into this whole principle of constant and never-ending improvement in my life. I'm always looking for hacks on how to improve my productivity and all that kind of stuff. And what I've noticed is there's kind of an unhealthy edge to it, because when you're in a process of constant and never-ending improvement, it means it's never ever okay the way it is. And there's something very powerful around just opening into acceptance and being and all that good stuff. But it's also when you're kind of stuck in a good habit or primarily in a bad habit, it's kind of an interesting thing to investigate. So I'd like to share with you a little reflection. I have found this to be really, really helpful. And it's a reflection on karma and a habit that you feel is not helpful, and yet you're still kind of caught in it. And I'll just share very, very briefly. It's been, gosh, I think I stopped drinking all alcohol probably about 4 years ago, but I love beer. I've always loved beer, love the taste of beer. And I noticed that I never felt that great the day after. But I just like the ritual of it. and yet at the same time, I was really aware I felt dehydrated the next day, and wasn't that helpful. And so I just thought, well, what if I didn't change this habit? What if I just kept doing this and kind of draw that out over time? And I could just see that it was like a degrading my health. And then I thought, if I changed it, if I didn't, what would that feel like over a long period of time? And I could feel long term how much more healthy and alive I'd feel. That's kind of a subtle practice. But nonetheless, taking a look at the long-term consequences of not changing, I found to be very, very helpful for me to sort of change my habits. So I'd like to offer a little reflection, if you would. If you like, you can close your eyes if you're comfortable, and you might think about some habit or some activity that you're taking part in that isn't necessarily wholesome, or you're kind of questioning it. Just take a moment to kind of hone in on that. And you can ask yourself the following questions. If nothing changes in regard to this habit or action, and this goes on for a month or a year, what would the result be? And if nothing changes and this goes on for 10 years or 15 years, what would the result be? You might even just sort of maybe even exaggerate a little bit just to kind of get a sense of that. And now, if there was a way that you could change this habit, either to refrain from it or to replace it with something more life-affirming, if you were to make that change, and if you were to be consistent with that for a month or a year, or what would that be like? What would that feel like? And if you could imagine extending that out over 10 years or 15 years, what would that be like? And if you like, you can deepen your breath. And if your eyes are closed, you feel free to open them, or you can remain with them closed. Sometimes I have found this reflection to be really, really helpful. The sense if this habit or action goes on as it is for the next 5, 10, 15 years, what is the end result? To really see that. It's like they say, if you're firing a rocket at the moon and you're off just 1%, over the course of between here and the moon, you're way, way off target. And in that same way, when you reflect on a positive habit or a positive action, and you sense what is the effect over 5, 10, 15 years, what might that result be? One way I've kind of played with this is I usually take on a little creative daily thing that I do. And 3 years ago, I thought, you know what, it'd be fun to kind of do a daily cartoon. Just this is part of my little creative process of making something out of nothing. It doesn't take long, 5 to 10 minutes. And I've done that every day. I actually haven't, if I miss a day, I make it up, but it's very rare when I do that. And it's been 3 years, I have over 1,000 of these things. I'm not saying they're any good, but just that little habit has kind of opened up a lot more of a creative muscle for myself, just that little bit every day. So one of the ways you can work with this law of action and reaction is to sharpen your intention. Because if your actions influence your future, then the quality of your actions now are going to have impact. Deepak Chopra once said, to see the impact of your past habits, look at your health right now. And to get a sense of your future health, look at your habits right now. Of course, genetics play a large part in health, and we can't do everything about that. But to some degree, lifestyle, actions, and habits have huge impact on your health and on your future. I've just noticed for myself to get an impact of karma is to look at my diet. Chances are, if there are any toxins, they may have a long-term effect. Smoking, for example, doesn't necessarily give you immediate karma, but you tend to set in motion something that will have long-term consequences. If you meditate every day, just sort of pause, and you do that over years, there's a certain reaction that can occur there as well. As I like to say, sometimes it's the benefit you get from meditation itself, and sometimes it's the benefit you get by the trouble you don't get into because you're meditating. So it's an interesting question to really evaluate, what are your habits now that are creating wholesome states or less than wholesome states? And if you were to bring intention into those actions, how might that affect your future? So again, it's easy to think of karma, that karma explains everything. And certain philosophies they say that karma does explain everything. If you have potholes in front of your house, you're not pure enough or something like that. But I think it's been pointed out that it's much more subtle to that. And it's something about this relationship between intention and then the actions that you take. And what I love about this inquiry is that no one can tell you what's ultimately best for you. You need to make the choices that you feel are going to have the most wholesome impact as possible for yourself. And here, the sense of karma has to do with choice. The intention can be seen as like planting seeds. When you form a habit, the habit becomes your character, and that becomes your destiny. So when we think about their short-term karma, like the immediate feedback you get from an action, and then the long-term karma, like the accumulated effect of actions. And what about like big picture, long-term karma? And this, to me, is quite interesting because it points to the possibility of not being caught in this cycle of action-reaction. I mean, the first time I went to one of those, conference holistic health things many years ago, the Hare Krishnas had a stand there, and they have this model that they use, and it shows this image of a baby crawling, and then there's the baby walking, and then there's the young man, and then there's the warrior full of life, and then there's the kind of the midlife man, and then there's the aging, sick, and dying man, and then there's the death, like there's the corpse. Then there's primal ooze. And then a baby is formed, and then the cycle begins again and again and again. And it's a beautiful kind of illustration of what's kind of called the Wheel of Samsara, or the Wheel of Becoming. That when we are caught in this world of desire, this world of aversion, the world of confusion, that what drives us forward is this never-ending desire. You really want something, you fantasize, you obsess, you get it, and then the lure fades, and then you want the next thing. I meet people there, what they most want is relationship, to be in an intimate relationship. Then what they want more than anything is to be married. And then what they most want is kids. Maybe the kids will make us happy. And then it's like, well, if you just get the kids out of the house, then we'll be happy. And then if I could just be single again, then I'd be happy. You know this self-improvement cycle. We're chasing happiness, and we're running from unpleasantness. And this cycle, it really is it's like a little wheel that we're running on, running after desire, and in that desire becoming over and over and over again. And mindfulness is about becoming aware of the wheel, noticing the coming and going of greed and of hatred and delusion. It's noticing what's happening as it's happening, but more than that, it's noticing how you're relating to it. And this is where the understanding of karma is so important. When you feel anger, should you react? Or should you investigate what's prompting that reactivity? It doesn't mean you don't act, but it might mean that you act more skillfully rather than unskillfully. Ultimately, it's possible for you to stop fighting the wheel of becoming. That phrase I love, of in the world but not of it. In the dream and out of the dream. And so when we would kind of reflect on intention and action and karma, I was once on a meditation retreat, and I was thinking about a certain political party, and I began to feel frustration, rage, anger, revenge, and I found myself fighting it. Not okay to feel this on retreat, but then I got curious, and I could feel this energy, this fire, this burning inside, and as I just made room for it, just noting it and letting it be, what was left with was a sense of peace and a sense of compassion. There was a little bit of a sense of beginning to sense like the anger on the other side, feeling there's an unmet need there as well. And I realized that on that retreat, the karma I could have created by acting out of that rage. And at the same time, the possibility of responding to that force rather than a kind of a knee-jerk reaction. So this becomes a very practical way of practicing. More and more, and I take driving as a spiritual practice. When someone cuts me off on the highway, I just imagine what it's like for them. The world that they're creating for themselves through those actions. And when I can do that, I'm no longer participating into that whole cycle. So when you remember that you are the product of causes and conditions, you have certain tools. One tool is this faculty of wisdom. You can remember that everything changes. The positive experiences, the negative experiences, they're all changing. You can remember the fundamental emptiness of this life, that this wheel of samsara, the wheel of becoming, that when you remember that who you really are is beyond that conditioning, you can open up new possibilities. Compassion is a wonderful tool, remembering that everyone's doing the best they can. And remembering that your intention, remembering what's most important, can help you to move into an action which will feel more wholesome, that might not perpetuate the suffering, but open up some new possibilities. So the recognition of karma, of cause and effect, sometimes it can feel paralyzing, but it can also lead to skillful action. And the action is always informed by asking yourself, what is my deepest intention here? What do I really, really want? Someone said, how people treat you is their karma. How you react is yours. It's a wonderful little reading I love. It's entitled Peace by Dorothy Hunt. And she writes the following: do you think peace requires an end to war, or tigers eating only vegetables? Does peace require an absence from your boss, your spouse, yourself? Do you think peace will come from some other place than here? Some other time than now? In some other heart than yours? Peace at this moment without judgment. That is all. This moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. Peace in this moment without thinking that it should be some other way, that you should feel some other thing, that your life should unfold according to your plans. Peace in this moment without judgment. This moment is the heart space where everything that is welcome. Let's just take a few moments, if you will, before we close to kind of reflect on this. If you like, you might close your eyes, and if you like, you might take 3 slow breaths, relaxing on the out breath. And you might let these words just resonate. Peace is this moment without judgment. Peace is this moment without thinking that it should be some other way, that you should feel some other thing, that your life should unfold according to your plans. If you'd like, you can deepen the breath. And if you'd like, you can open the eyes. There are times in my life when I like to just simply reflect on the cards that I've been dealt. I would love to have other faculties, other capabilities, other possibilities, but I realize this is what I'm working with. These are the cards I have in my hand. And I think when we do that, when we recognize this is what I have to work with in this life, and then we can move into an acceptance of that. We can then reflect on what we most want. Given the faculties I have, what do I want? What do I most want? And what actions are going to support that outcome? I think these are the foundational questions that can create a life that can feel in alignment. And having a life where heart and mind and spirit are aligned is one of the greatest joys there is. So knowing that all things change, knowing that everyone you love will vanish in no particular order, knowing that your life will evaporate, and knowing that you're not dead yet. How would you like to live your wild life? Thank you so much for your time and attention. Many, many blessings in your practice. Wonderful to be with you.